We're writing a counterpoint above a canis firmus, which is in treble clef, so we don't have a lot of space. I've analyzed the contour of our cantus firmus, and those two things together will affect our melodic choices. You'll notice you're going to want to end with an octave here, because otherwise you would have a voice overlap with the preceding bar. You'll recall that in ending your counterpoint, you have a couple of choices, but the more common of the two is to end when you're working above with La, Ti, Do. Remember, we're in minor, so we need to raise scale degrees 6 and 7 from Le to La, from Te to Ti. So that makes a fifth, a sixth, and an octave, and some nice contrary motion across the bar line. At this point, I like to go back to the beginning. In first species, it was a bit easier because we had limited choices. Now we have a lot of choices. We could start on a third or fifth. We could also start on an octave or even a tenth. And remember, we can also start on a rest as well, and then on the weak beat, start on a third, fifth, or octave. If you start on a third here in that register, notice you're going to have some tight maneuvering. So it's nice to give yourself a little bit more space here, but that's about the biggest amount of space you're going to want to have. Notice here I've filled in an F going down stepwise motion to a D in the counterpoint, and I chose to do that because it makes a nice contrary motion with the canis firmus. Sometimes in second species, though not always, I like to look ahead, look across the bar line, and sort of think in first species for just a moment. So if I'm thinking across the bar line here, my choices for the third bar, I could have a sixth. I could also have an octave. I can't have a fifth here because a fifth would be a diminished fifth, a tritone, and you can't have a dissonance on a strong beat. You could also have a third here. That would be perfectly fine, but it's a little bit far to go all the way from that D in the bar before down to that G. So I chose to stick with another sixth. So across the bar line from strong beat to strong beat, that is a parallel motion. However, I'm going to make a contrary motion from weak beat to strong beat by leaping down to that third and then leaping back up across the bar line, or skipping back up across the bar line. Notice you can't have a fourth here. That's a dissonance, and you're skipping to that dissonance. You must move to dissonance by stepwise, by passing motion. And for the same reason, you can't have a seventh here. That would also not be permitted. Having two of the same notes in a row is also not permitted. You could skip down the octave, but here that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I stuck with the third and moving to the sixth. Looking ahead, you'll notice that the canis firmus continues down by step. I want to avoid having too much of the same motion on the strong beats, so I'm going to not go to another sixth, even though it might be all right. I'm going to try going to fifth, but you'll notice here, if you look from that C in the third bar in the counterpoint to that A, we have a direct fifth from strong beat to strong beat. So you'll remember we can fix that by having some contrary motion across the bar line. If you skip down or leap down, that contrary motion from the weak beat of bar 3 into that bar is fine. Now we are coming to a leap in the canis firmus, an upwards leap. In general, contrary motion with large leaps is still ideal, but you'll notice here we can't have a unison on a strong beat. So we have to move up. So we're going to keep it as close as possible. We're going to just go to a third, the B flat, and then we're going to add some contrary motion across the bar line, that D, to the B flat, in order to counterbalance that upwards leap in the cantus firmus. We do have a fifth and an octave in bar 4, which isn't great, but it's permissible, and so we'll keep it for now, since it helps us get to that third on bar 5. So our next, you'll notice in the next little bit we have another stepwise motion down in the cantus firmus. So from this third, we could do some contrary motion. We could do basically a move up to a sixth in bar 6 to the D there, and then we have that gap of a third that we can fill in with a dissonant passing tone on the weak beat, which is perfectly fine. But in looking at this some more, I'm seeing that I'm noodling around that D a lot. I have nice stepwise motion of it, but that D, I keep coming back to it. So in order to add a little bit more melodic interest, I want to look for some other possibilities. So I like that third on the downbeat, so I'm gonna see about another possibility for this fourth here, doing something other than that C. I can come down to a unison on a weak beat. A unison on a weak beat is perfectly acceptable, though you don't want to have too many of those because again the voices lose independence. So I'm going to switch that D now down to an A, keep it down in that lower register, and look ahead a bit. I know that I have a skip coming up. Now, what's nice about a skip, upward skip in the cantus firmus, is that you can fill in a scale there. So you'll notice I have a third on the strong beat, on both of those strong beats, and I can fill in the space in between with fourths. Of course, that only works if in the following bar you can continue that upwards motion for one more beat, because both of those fourths need to be passing tones. So that second fourth is a passing tone between the C and the E, and that's fine because the E forms a sixth with the G. And now that's a nice climax, a bar after the climax in the cantus firmus. So we're getting close here, only a little bit more to fill in. If you're feeling stuck, what I would say is look to your imperfect consonances. So we have a sixth there that I just filled in, that F up to the D. That A needs to be in that lower register because the upper register is too high. It's out of the range that we want to work with. So now I've filled in a third and a sixth, and the question is, can I get to that third and sixth somehow? And I can if I fill in a D. If I have that fifth in the fourth to last bar, I am permitted to skip away from that, or to leap away from that. Remember, leaping across the bar line isn't always, well, it's okay, it's permitted, but you want to limit the number of times that you do that. You know you can't have the E to a B flat because of the tritone, and an E to a G would be too much. So really the E to the D ends up being the best choice there. Now I look over the line, the melodic line, double check to make sure I'm not outlining any dissonances, and it looks good. There is that leap, as I said, but in general I recovered the leaps in contrary motion, and that works out well. The reason for labeling all of your intervals is because now you can check very quickly to see whether you have any too many parallel thirds, for instance, or any parallel octaves on strong beats, and also any improper dissonances.